Hey, I want to welcome you again today to Revive Talk, a ministry of Revive Church in Stuart, Florida. Today, we have a guest who is truly, sincerely, for real, making a difference in our community, changing the lives of young men and young women in our community, literally setting them in a new direction. And we wanted you to hear about it. Our guest today is Bob Zaccheo with Project Lift. Bob, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. I've never had an introduction like that before. That was pretty good. Thank you.
I believe that. So tell me, tell our audience, who is Project Lift? What are you guys?
Sure. Well, Project Lift is a substance abuse and mental health program for teenagers in our community. They're teens that have been adjudicated through the court systems, sometimes are referred through guidance counselors, or just kind of self-referral in terms of, are they struggling with drugs, alcohol, depression, anxiety, stress management, attention deficit, true attention deficit hyperactivity, or even a family functional issue. And what we did was, I'm a licensed psychotherapist, and about 10 years ago, I noticed that there was a kind of a major issue with sitting in a clinical setting with a young person, right? It could be young man or young woman, right? So, but typically I was working with teenage boys between the ages of 14 and 19 years old. And as a clinician, I would be sitting in my office and having that one-on-one conversation with a kid. And I'd say something to them, kind of the quintessential, just like this even, here, I'm sitting here, like, yeah, got a kid. And you say to them, so how are you today? Right? And so I ask you, Pastor, how are you today?
I'm good.
And then you get radio silence,
Sure.
Right? And that's kind of what happens.
Yeah.
You're sitting in a session and you get this one-word response. And then you end up trying to, kind of fill the time with, a game or, jumping online and trying to see if there's I used to pull up the largest wave ever surfed, right? And I'd see like this danger happen for this kid, right? And so like, oh, cool, that's something I could relate to. And then eventually over 7-8 weeks, then they start opening up. Well, I got very frustrated with that model because it's a lot different than working with a young lady or a teenage girl in that setting, in that same setting. So I used to express it like this, and you have to excuse me on this part, but whenever I would have a teenage girl that I was counseling, it would be totally different, right? So I'd say to them, so how are you today? And they would just vomit out their emotion, right? Everything comes out.
Yeah.
You get it all in this one lump sum. But with a teenage boy, it doesn't happen that way. So one day I brought a fishing rod to work and I had no intention of doing any treatment. Really, I was just very frustrated. I just wanted to do something different. I brought a fishing rod. I was working in an office with about 30 other therapists at the time. It's a fly fishing rod. So what I wanted to do was teach that kid how to tie a dry fly, which is a plastic bait or plastic lure.
Sure.
So we sat in my office, no conversation really, just kind of some pleasantries, and sat down, and for a half hour, we didn't really talk, but we just learned how to tie this dry fly, and they made their own kind of unique lure. After we were done, I said to the young man, I said, you want to go behind the office? There's a retention pond back there. I'll teach you how to cast it, And so I did that. I went and brought him out back there, and literally before the bait was hitting the water, the kid's telling me, all about his promiscuous mom, drunk dad, and all the anger that he felt. So it was really that moment that I said, you know what, we got to do something different. Now, I think you could agree with me, taking a kid fishing, there's nothing really unique about that. I think people do that. But what happened next was pretty unique. I called a buddy of mine who was an ASC certified mechanic. And I asked him, I said, he was also in recovery, so he knew the recovery processes for addiction. And I said to him, I go, do you want to teach these kids how to do automotive repair, or teach this kid how to do automotive repair while I do psychotherapy underneath the hood of a car?
Wow.
And that's how Project Lift started 10 years ago, where that first year, my buddy and I, we worked with about 19 kids. And now here we are in 2020, and we'll be just over 400 kids doing amazing things with obviously psychotherapy in the same setting, in a shop setting with real shop outputs.
Now, you have 400 youth in the program.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the skills that you're teaching them?
Yeah. Originally, it was about automotive repair, right? That was something that we started with because it was the bird in the hand. I had a buddy who was an ASE certified mechanic, and not for nothing, I love working on cars. That's something that's very special to me. So it started there, and then we started letting the kid drive that train, right? Is that, hey, you don't like working on cars? What is it that you might want to learn, right? And so almost every single vocation that we started because of one of the youth drove that train. One of the youth said, you know what, I want to be a welder. How about we get some welding equipment? And boom, we have an amazing community of supporters. And when we put the word out that we needed welding equipment, it happened. I don't see it terribly hard to reach out to our community who's so giving to get those kind of things started. So within just a week or two, we had enough equipment to start a welding program. And the same thing happened with our screen printing program as well. So now we have close to $200,000 worth of equipment in our building, just in our screen printing department alone, where it's state-of-the-art equipment that teaches that connection between trade and technology, right? Because that's what we really want the kids to know, is that does this piece of machinery that you're working on translate into the real work environment? So we have welding and carpentry, we have boat building, boat restoration, we have graphic arts departments, we have upholstery, tailoring, sewing, that kind of thing.
Now, I'm going to assume that all of these different skill sets that you have, you're somehow connected with somebody in the community who does that. Are you bringing them in to help them do the screen printing? Are they working directly with your students? Are they the teachers? Is this bringing community business owners into the loop?
Pastor, I feel like one of the best things that we did was connect with industry, right? That I believe genuinely in my heart and what I've seen through Project Lift's growth is that if we don't follow industry, we lose, right? Industry changes things. Industry drives disruptions. Industry drives innovations. If we don't stay involved and closely involved with industry, then we don't have a fighting chance with those kids, right? So originally, Project Lift started with volunteers, to answer your question. And being volunteer-driven is awesome, but it's also very hard, right? It's also very hard. And especially in Martin County, where we have a lot of really well-intentioned volunteers that are like, well, I'm only here from October, November to April. Sure. And then I have a whole summer's worth of drop off, which is really difficult to do. So we made that decision about 8 years ago, that we needed to hire our vocational instructors. And so right now we have 7 full-time, at our site in Martin County, we have 7 full-time vocational instructors, from construction to automotive repair to screen printing to graphic arts and so on.
Tell us a little bit about how the students then come into your program. Where do they come from? What are the sources? How does a person recommend or get someone opened up to being involved in your program?
Yeah, I'm going to kind of twofold this question for you, because I do believe that there's some value in what you said about how there's this convergence between mental health, substance abuse treatment, and the vocational trade, right? Yeah. So when we look at things mental health wise, we want to make sure that we are working in the resilience models, right? That we believe that every kid has resilience in them and that we can rise that up out of them. Unfortunately, in our school districts and across the country, over the past 25, 30 years, we've seen a decline in the amount of vocational training that's done in the school systems, which also in turn took a lot of dignity out of the process, right? So those kids that we all went to school with, I can remember the guys that were in my classes, and I'm thinking, they were in auto repair shops and they were in construction programs and so on. They're very successful and still very successful today. Mm-hmm. Can you imagine, though? Those aren't there anymore. Those programs aren't there anymore to foster those kids to be successful.
I am a long way from high school. Mm-hmm. But I can remember in high school an entire building behind our high school that had wood shop, that had a body shop, that had an auto mechanic shop. Those were skills that were taught in school, and they don't seem to be there anymore today.
Yeah, they're just not. And a lot of times they're called CTEs, or career technical education. But there's some diluting to that. It's like, CNAs and, some of these other type jobs that are out there, even assistant veterinarian. It doesn't really hone in on that tactily talented kid. that really needs to get their hands dirty and isn't afraid to get hurt or injured during that process, right? So in that is that first kind of part of that problem, which is, how do we solve the issue that 70% of our country doesn't go to college, and then have the conversation with, well, that's okay, but what are we doing to make sure that 70% has a skill or has something to do? So that's kind of that first part. But if we're going to talk about kind of where the kids come from, it's really changed over the years, a lot. Obviously, having a mental health and substance abuse background, my background is as a substance abuse expert. So obviously, there was a natural fit with starting with youth that were struggling in that particular area. We take a look at our referral sources in all kinds of different ways. One of our biggest referral sources is Circuit 19 and Circuit 15, which are our two judicial circuits here in Martin County and also in Palm Beach County. Having relationships directly with the judges and the state attorneys and the prosecutors and the public defenders, and also the Health and Human Services Department, which is our diversion programs, our drug courts, our REACH programs that help the schools make appropriate referrals for programs like ours. That's our main referral sources.
What can you tell me a little bit about what we might call a success rate or maybe a success story?
Sure.
You've been doing this now 8 to 10 years.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about some examples of what you've seen.
We had a graduation just yesterday. So we have a high school diploma seeking program that uses a very apprentice style approach, right? So all of the youth that come into Project Lift are revalued through a paycheck, right? So we value them by the work that they do, right? So if you're productive and so on, then you get paid for the work that you're doing. Nice. And to us, we feel like that's a staple in revaluing a kid, right? Yeah. I'm not just a great drug dealer, right? I'm not just a great, whatever, I'm not just the best pot smoker in my group or whatever. I'm really good at welding, and I'm going to value that you with that, and also be able to help you with job readiness and job training and all those other things that come along with it. We have an HR department. We have all shared workspacing so that the kids feel like they're genuinely part of Project Lift. So we had a graduation yesterday. So we had 13 young people who had previously dropped out of high school prior to COVID and during COVID, right? That completely dropped out. They graduated high school with a high school diploma from an advanced ed accredited curriculum that was administered at Project Lift through an apprentice-style approach where they were continuing to be paid for the work that they were doing. They got their high school diploma. They had high-quality mental health and substance abuse treatment. And oh, by the way, we sat down with them every night and had a family-style meal. So to us, I can give you a group of successes just yesterday.
Yeah.
And the blessing was I got to read 13 amazing stories of those kids and their triumphs, what they've been through and where they're going. I'm really proud to say, and my son questions, says this to me sometimes, like, I tout how 30% of the youth that come through Martin County, that's the only ones that are going to college, and then it dwindles down even after that. 14% master's degree, even 4% of PhDs. But yesterday we had 44% of the kids that we were graduated yesterday going to the university, going to ISC.
Wow.
So we're really, really proud of that. Awesome. But even more proud, we got 100% of them that are in the workforce, and that's what you want. To me, that's where the icing is that they get that opportunity.
So Project Lift then also helps find them a job?
Yes, sir. Yeah. So I think, again, we're following industry, right? And one of the unique things that Project Lift does that I think is a major disruption in the typical nonprofit movement and also in the mental health piece is it says, listen, these young folks are struggling with mental health and substance abuse issues right here, right in your own home, right in our own churches and in our own businesses, right? So that part's really key in our own businesses, right? 80% of the country that loses their job typically, barring any, pandemics, loses their job because of a mental health or substance abuse issue, right? Could be just like I talked about earlier, same things that we talk about with the kids, depression, anxiety, stress, family functional issues. 90% of the time it's family functional issues, what's going on at home. they lose their jobs. So tell me again, Pastor, why is it that we don't teach these 14 to 19-year-olds how to work in a work environment?
Great
And
question.
how to effectively work in a work environment? So what we do is we partner with industry, with businesses in the communities. We invite them in to teach us and our youth exactly how they want their employees to, how and what they want their employees to learn.
Great move.
Yeah.
Great
This
move.
way we follow them. And that is exactly how we do it. Now, what we've done effectively for the jobs piece, right? So it's about job readiness now, right? We have these major components of Project Lift. To me, the gold standard is, can that kid hold a job outside of Project Lift, right? Can they hold a job outside of our typically controlled environment?
Yeah.
Great.
It starts with a relationship. I got my first job when I was a kid because of a relationship my dad had with somebody else, right? He said, my son, I'm going to guarantee that he's going to work hard for you, and I'm going to make sure that works. It was a relationship, right? What we're doing is establishing direct relationship with business owners and managers and supervisors in the real work world. They're coming in, establishing relationships with our youth. Then we make the hiring seamless, right? And give them opportunities to continue to work outside of Project Lift. So that's how we do it. And we have a pretty good success rate of that as well.
It's awesome.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit then about your vision.
Yeah.
Where are you going? What's next? What do you see for the future of Project Lift?
Yeah, I'm loving these softballs that you're throwing up in the air. Like I wasn't very big at the fastball coming down the pipe, but the softballs are great. Project Lift, I think, has gotten a lot of national attention because of the model itself. We've been working really hard on our playbook so that we can standardize this and give people the little pieces that really work and give communities the pieces that really work. Because it's not just about the mental health counseling. It's not just about the family style meal and the vocational trade and all those other things. It's about how you do the little things, right? So for us, and I speak this as loudly as I can possibly speak this to every nonprofit that's out there that works with teens, is a lot of times you can fix your teen issue, like a teen attendance issue, just by the way you transport a kid, right? Don't go pick them up in a 12-passenger assisted living van, or don't go pick them up in front of the high school in a 12 or 15-passenger van. They're not getting in. They're 16.
Yeah.
They don't want to get in. So one of the little pieces of our playbook has that in it, right? It says, look, we want to make sure that the kids have dignity, hope, and respect and all that other stuff. One of the ways we do that is we pick them up in normal-looking vehicles, cars that you might drive to work, an SUV, a van, or a minivan or something of that nature, where they're okay getting in that car, right? So for us, the future now looks really broad. I've been to all across the country. I've been also internationally to Dubai and speaking to the Global Skills Forum out there. It's Global Education and Skills Forum out in Dubai about this particular model and why it works with replacement behavior. So for us, our vision is big. Our vision is that we really want to see this strategy across the country in as many counties as we can possibly do. We just laid out our 10-year plan, and our 10-year plan includes 60 cities, 30,000 kids, and 120,000 people out of poverty.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a God-sized plan.
No kidding.
Okay, so let's get down to nuts and bolts then. How is Project Lift funded?
So we have lots of different ways that we're funded, and I think that's been really key for Project Lift is that we started Project Lift. I remember what 2010 was like, 2009, 2010.
Crash.
Good luck asking people for money to help, right? It really was not a great time to start a nonprofit, but certainly I didn't know that. It was a genuine start where I was like, we got to do something different here. We have to change the way things are done. And so actually one of the first funders that we ever had was just a local neighborhood, wealthy neighborhood in Martin County. And you go to those neighborhoods and you do presentations, and then they ask you to submit applications and so on, and are more affluent, I shouldn't say wealthier, a more affluent neighborhood. And they understand it. I mean, you'll be surprised with how, I wouldn't be surprised or shouldn't be surprised, but how amazing these folks are. They get it. They get the disruption. They understand it. And they get like that we have problems in our community that are more intergenerational problems. There's 2 generational poverty issues that we have. So we went to them first, and some of our first funders were, $5,000, $1,000, $200, and I squirrel it away in a bank account and make sure that we can pay all our bills, and then it's kind of morphed into some quasi-governmental things. So, for instance, like the Children's Services Council of Martin County funds Project Lift at about $133,000 a year. United Way of Martin County, the Martin County Community Foundation. So it's Community Foundation of Martin and St. Lucie County, which is here. Elizabeth Barbella does a great job of really putting people out there to make sure that they're getting the funding that they need. Individual donors and family foundations are those other legs of the stool. And certainly we work really hard in our marketing and our grant writing department. In fact, we just brought on one of the most amazing and talented grant writers that I've seen in a long time, and Lauren Adrian. So it's been really, really fantastic in that way.
That's awesome.
Wonderful.
Fundraisers, I could go on and on. Fundraisers and all kinds of cool things, but we do a really good job of making sure that we have a grassroots effort going on in the counties that we are. I've been in Martin County my entire life. I grew up here, grew up in Jensen Beach, boomeranged back to here. We know a lot of people, and that's not in every case in every county, but it does speak into the grassroots efforts that help you continue to grow your base of donors.
What would you want to say to the people of Martin and out in Belglade? What would you want to say to them, maybe in closing, about Project Lift?
Well, on behalf of Project Lift, I would say thank you.
Yeah.
That would be the very first thing. Is I would just say thank everybody that's contributed. I'm sure a lot of people watching this have contributed to Project Lift in one way or another, or just been involved with us in volunteerism or some in one way. But just genuinely thank you. Thank you for all that you've done and all that you're continuing to allow us to do to be good stewards of everything that you've given us. Ultimately, though, if we took a look at volunteerism and we took a look at what it is that can continue to help us push this needle down the path here, would be one is volunteers, vocational volunteers. We would love to join us, to help out, to help alleviate some of the pressure on some of our full-time staff, especially right now because of the growth that we've seen. Right now, we're space challenged. We're looking at having to grow exponentially really fast without overgrowing, right? Because we all don't know what November, December is going to look like. We don't know what January, February. We have some ideas of what we can speculate on, but the last thing you want to do is go out and, buy a, 70,000 square foot building right now. You don't know what that's going to be like, and you don't want to put together a capital campaign in that area. But what you can do is take a very thoughtful approach to expansion that helps leave those windows open so that we can deal with the acute issues that we have right now, and then also set us up for a future that's looking pretty good in serving the amount of youth that we need to serve. So we're just one other quick thing is I would say right now we're looking at about 150, based on the numbers that we just got off the phone dealing with our operations director on, was we're going to see about 150 new youth above our normal numbers next year based on this. So food is a big deal. Food is a big deal for us.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier that you have a sit-down dinner.
We have a sit-down dinner.
Where do you do that at?
Well, I think Jesus did it with his disciples, right? And some epic story that's in the Bible, right? The bottom line is we do it right there at the facility. Awesome. We have our group therapy rooms. We convert those into opportunities for us all to sit down as a family and eat and break bread together. There's something super special about that. We get our group therapy sessions. We do our individual treatment. The mentors are doing their jobs in the vocational training. But when you sit down with a kid and have dinner with them, it changes everything. Yeah. I mean, so our staff, our volunteers, the kids that we work with, we all sit down and eat dinner together every single night. So there'll be 30 or 40 of us sitting down and eating dinner.
I think it's a beautiful part of your program. I really do. Let me say that you've got a referral system of kids coming in. You've got volunteers that are helping. You've got staff that are actually hired under Project Lift. You've got businesses and organizations that are coming in with different trades to help you out. You've got people funding you. So there's a lot of people who need to get a hold of you.
Yes.
How do they get a hold of Project Lift?
Yeah. Obviously, I would say, number one, check out our website. Our website is www.projectliftmc.com. And go on there, search around. There's a lot of really good information on it. It'll show you exactly where some of the volunteer opportunities are. It'll show you pictures of the trades and where you can fit in if you have an idea of that. Also, certainly, we're always open to donations, whether that's cars, bicycles, boats, welding equipment, tools are big for us. We're constantly wanting to send our graduates off with tools so they actually have a toolkit to leave with so they can go to their work site with. Our HVAC department's in consistent need of vacuum pumps and all kinds of gauges and tools that I have no idea about because I'm a therapist. But for the most part, you can go on there and see some of the things that we're looking for. Obviously, cash donations are always welcome, but more significantly is your time. If we can harness your time and your talent to help Project Lift achieve the goals that we're trying to achieve with these youth in our communities, it's much more valuable than a check you can write.
Bob, thank you so much for coming and telling us about Project Lift today. Really have enjoyed it. Really believe in what you're doing. As I mentioned when we started, there are certain people in our community that are directly influencing and improving our community. Project Lift is doing it by taking youth that are at risk and are struggling, is teaching them a trade, is spending time with them, is sitting down and having a meal with them, and graduating them out into our community with a skill and a profession to provide a productive life for them and a productivity for our community. So I just want to invite you to check out the Project Lift website and get involved because this one is worthwhile. There's a lot that you can do here. Thank you all for joining us today on Revive Talk. God bless you. Have a great day.